I would like, I would like to invite our respected Dean and Principal Sir to give welcome address in today's pre-platinum jubilee CME in the topic Newer Trends in Drug-Resistant Tuberculosis under National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. Over to you, sir, for welcome address, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the topic chosen. Already you have been complimented. I welcome Dr. Parija and other speakers, all the participants, my fellow colleague. I had all the time been telling that this pre-platinum jubilee is just beginning of our celebration to the platinum jubilee. And we have started with a academic celebration for almost 2 months. We started from July 1st, we'll be ending in 31st of August. I had appealed to all that we must communicate about this program that we are conducting regularly to anyone and everyone who has a link to SCB and also to other faculties of the same department, other doctors of the same specialty. So in that line, I would always request all our HOD time and again that we should inform not only our SCBians, but also other institutions like VSS Medical College, MKCG, Medical College of Baripada, Baleshwar, Koraput, everywhere we should, Balangir, we should try to percolate that we are having this activity and any participant who has an interest can participate. Only thing that we have to provide the information because today is a topic, so interesting topic, multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. It is of interest to everybody. Being a urologist, we have a genitourinary tuberculosis. We always feel at loss how to go ahead with the management strategy. What should be the protocol as regard the drugs are concerned? What is the resistance as regard the mycobacterium tuberculosis is concerned? So all these things, when we know about it, we feel much more confident when we are treating patient with a tuberculosis. Now, the common concept is the tuberculosis, possibly everything is in the pulmonary area. People focus on the pulmonary area. Extrapulmonary, the focus is not there. I would also appreciate if during the deliberation, Dr. Parija also mentioned about the extrapulmonary tuberculosis. Now, instead of going further, I would request to kindly start the proceeding. And as usual, our request that please confine your talk to 20 minutes. We'll have a discussion for 10 minutes. So two speakers. So we have 1 hour. It is 7 p.m. and we can complete around 5:15 p.m. So over to you, Minaki. Please further proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I have the honor of introducing our speakers. Our first speaker, Dr. Devadatta Parija, who is our regional team lead, WHO National TB Elimination Program. He is an SCB alumni. He has got a vast experience of working with the National TB Program and has also worked with multiple international public health organizations like World Health Organization, JAPIGO, FIND in senior management capacity. He has also got vast experience of WHO consultation for supporting TB program in other countries as well. He has got technical expertise for the various national committees for preparing national guidelines for the management of tuberculosis, multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, extensive drug resistant tuberculosis, HIV TB, pediatric TB, and extrapulmonary tuberculosis. He has got multiple publications in various journals to his credit. And our second speaker, Dr. Arghya Pradhan, is also an SCB alumni. He is also the Joint Director of Health Services Tuberculosis Odisha, has got more than 20 years of experiences in different capacities in Department of Health and Family Welfare, Government of Odisha, as State, surveillance officer during 2015 to 18. His role was instrumental in management of outbreaks of various communicable diseases. He is the epidemic intelligence survey officer, one of the epidemic intelligence survey officer in India, trained in New Delhi and had been to CDC Atlanta for practical visit, and his topic is revised protocol for diagnosis of drug resistant tuberculosis. Now I request our first speaker Dr. Devadatta Parija for his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Parija, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, respected seniors. It's really an honor and a privilege to be able to get an opportunity to speak at this very important occasion. So actually right now I'm in Delhi. If I had been in Odisha, I would have loved to come down to my alumni and sit down there with you and present this, but I'll still try to do my best. So I'm going to share my screen. So just give me a second. So is my screen visible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 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 So it's now in the PowerPoint mode, right? You can see the full screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, so what I will do over the next 15-20 minutes is I'll try to take you through the recent trends in the programmatic management of drug-resistant TB. So this will 20 minutes is actually too less to tell you each and every detail of the management of drug-resistant TB. But what this presentation will do is it should give you a flavor of the program. It should whet your curiosity to read further on this. And we have stalwarts like Manu Patnaik sir, Jyoti madam, Pothal sir, who can then guide us further when we start actually taking an interest in these things. So without further ado, so what, as I told, what we will discuss is I will quickly talk a bit about the global and national magnitude of the drug-resistant TB problem. I will also take you through the current status of drug-resistant TB services and treatment outcomes in India. We will touch upon the National Strategic Plan. This is the document which guides the entire program for the country. I'll also talk a bit about the causes and prevention of drug-resistant TB. And I'll give you a broad overview of the updated strategies and activities for implementation of DRTB services. Resistance. So every year WHO publishes an annual global TB report. So as per the latest report, so the incidence of TB is around 10 million globally, right? So 10 million or 1 crore TB is the incidence globally. India has close to 26 lakh TB incidents every year. So every year we expect around 26 lakh TB cases, which basically contributes to 26% of the entire global TB burden. So like in many other diseases, in TB as well, India is the global leader, not in a very good way, but India is a global leader in contributing to the incidence of TB. So if you look at the rates, this 26 lakh, it turns out to around 193 cases per lakh. Now, if you look at mortality, this includes TB HIV mortality. So globally, roughly 14 lakh deaths happen due to TB annually. And India again sees a huge, more than close to 4.5 lakh deaths every year due to TB. Although this is not much highlighted, it is something like a routine disease which has been with us since centuries. But if you look at the number of deaths that take place in India, 4.5 lakh deaths every year, that's a huge number. It's almost 32% of the total global deaths that happen every year. And if we come to the topic of the day, which is drug-resistant TB. So globally, every year, there are around 4.6 lakh drug-resistant TB estimates, of which India sees around 1.24 lakh drug-resistant TB every year. Here you can see it contributes to more than a quarter of the global drug-resistant TB burden. So this slide should tell you about the huge burden that we, as a country, that we face due to TB, its mortality, as well as drug-resistant TB. Now, to figure out exactly where we were in 2015, we had done a pan-country drug-resistant TB survey. So, which was basically to figure out what proportion of our TB cases are actually drug-resistant. So, I won't delve into all the numbers, but what I want you to focus on is this. So, this basically says that close to 30% of all TB cases have resistance to some or the other anti-TB drug. So you can imagine the burden. Close to 30% of all TB cases have resistance to at least one anti-TB drug. If you come to MDR, which is resistance to at least rifampicin being the cornerstone of treatment. So in new cases, obviously someone who has not been exposed to treatment, the proportion of drug resistant in new cases is around 2.84%, whereas in previously treated cases, these are cases which have been previously exposed to some kind of an anti-TB treatment. There, obviously, it is higher. It's close to 12%. So 12% of previously treated cases are multi-drug resistant TB cases. But overall, if you want to look at the overall picture, it comes to around 6%. So which means around 6% of all TB cases in India, as per our own country data, are drug resistant TB cases, right? This survey obviously needs to be repeated at some frequency annually or at least once every 5 years to figure out whether our drug resistant proportion is increasing, decreasing, or is it remaining stationary. Now, quickly, I'll take you through the milestones in evolution of PMDT. PMDT is the programmatic management of drug resistant TB. So frankly, we started this late. Although the country was covered under the TB control program by 2003, we started going after drug resistant TB somewhere around 2007. Can we please mute ourselves? Yeah. So we started drug resistant TB services somewhere around 2007. So initially we started by establishing solid culture and DST labs. So just one point I wanted to reiterate here. All of us need to remember one very important fundamental fact. That is, the diagnosis of drug resistant TB is only a lab diagnosis. You cannot clinically diagnose a drug resistant TB, right? So the only way to diagnose a drug resistant TB is basis some lab results, culture DST results. Without that, you can never figure out whether this TB is a drug sensitive TB or a drug resistant TB. So the very first step was establishing labs. So we started by establishing solid culture and DST labs. We started by initially picking on a few of the patients with unfavorable outcomes, the failure cases, testing them and then treating them. Then gradually by 2012, we had established quite a few labs. We had established liquid culture and DST labs. We had established line probe assay labs. And we had rolled out the services pan country. And between 2012 to 2017, we started rolling out the NAT technology, which is the cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test, or popularly known as GeneXpert. So this was one game-changing technology which took the diagnosis of drug-resistant TB down to the periphery. So at the district level or even at the sub-district level, we could quickly diagnose TB and tell whether it is resistant or sensitive to rifampicin. So this was the NAT technology which was rolled out. And now I'm very happy to inform you that in India, all of our districts have at least one NAT lab, at least one. Like Cuttack has multiple NAT labs. My own college, SCB, has, I think, at least 2 or 3 NAT machines. We are giving a few more to SCB because the caseload is the highest there. Then we went in for universal DST, which means any patient who was diagnosed with TB was automatically offered culture DST to find out whether he or she is resistant to any other drugs, so that we could tailor-made the treatment for each kind of TB. So that is called universal drug susceptibility testing. That has been rolled out as a policy. We have introduced 2 very potent drugs, bedaquiline and delaminid, recently between these periods. These have drastically improved the outcomes of drug-resistant TB cases. I'll talk a bit more about them later on in the presentation. And going forward, we have a very ambitious plan to introduce the NAT technology, the CBNAT or the TrueNAT technology, right up to the block level. which means any presumptive TB patient at the block level will have access to the best diagnostic, which is a NAT lab. So that is the plan, and we have already started working on it. We are also trying to shorten the regimen. The current regimens are too long, because of which we are seeing a lot of dropouts. So I'll elaborate on these as I go further in the presentation. So to give you a snapshot, so currently what has happened is we have close to 1,300 gene expert labs across the country. We have close to 1,900 TrueNAT labs. We have 81 culture and DST labs. As you might be aware, in Odisha, we have one at SCB, we have one at RMRC Bhubaneswar, and one more is coming up at Burla. And we have plans to introduce labs at both Barampur as well as Koraput. Then we have 67 line probe assays labs, which test for all the first line drugs. We have 57 line probe assay labs, which test for second line drugs. We have 55 liquid culture and DST labs across the country. So infrastructure wise, lab wise, we have been progressing very rapidly. We have also managed to establish nodal DRTB center. These are the centers, the tertiary care center, where the treatment for PMDT and the drug resistant TB cases are initiated. So we don't initiate drug resistant TB treatment without this. So the patient is thoroughly examined. It takes a week to see whether the patient is tolerating drugs, and then only this patient is, we feel confident enough to let the patient go back home and start taking the treatment. So we have 173 nodal DRTB centers across the country. In Odisha, we have nodal DRTB centers at SCB, MKCG, VSS. Then we have district DRTB centers. Now we are trying to gradually roll out one DRTB center in every district, which can actually initiate treatment, so that the patient doesn't have to travel all the way to Cuttack or Burla or Barampur. So with all of this, we have been able to, from its rollout, we have been able to successfully diagnose more than 3.5 lakh drug resistant TB cases, and we have treated most of them. But then what about outcomes? Were we successful? Were we able to treat them successfully? Frank answer was initially no. If you look at this, the orange and the black lines, the orange is the treatment outcomes for the period between 2012 to 2017. You can see it never exceeded 50%. So we were barely able to successfully treat less than half of the patients that we started on treatment. These are all MDR or XDR cases. Obviously, the treatment outcomes of XDR is worse. XDR is extensively drug resistant TB, while MDR is multi-drug resistant TB, right? So for us in India, MDR means resistance to at least rifampicin, whereas XDR means resistant to MDR plus resistance to further second line drugs. So obviously XDR will, it had traditionally a poorer outcome because these patients were resistant to multiple drugs. We barely had a few drugs to, we ran out of choices, frankly. But then something dramatic happened around 2017. We got a new drug called bedaquiline. Introducing that drug instantly improved our cure rates to 71%. So this is the new ray of hope. This is probably a drug, a new molecule which has come into TB treatment after decades. I think after at least 40 or 50 years. So this molecule drastically improved the treatment outcomes. And now from the very beginning, we started seeing treatment success rates of more than 70%. And that has been continuing. So now a bit on the national strategy plan. So how does India plan to tackle the menace of drug resistant TB? So broadly, we have 4 pillars. These have been distributed into detect, treat, and build. So in short, in prevent, we will try to prevent drug resistant TB from happening, which is by ensuring airborne infection control at facility, household, and community levels, access to effective TB preventive treatment, programmatic management of TB infection, not only disease, but also infection. In detect, obviously, this is very crucial. We will ensure early identification of presumptive TB as well as specific tools like the NAT, which I mentioned. Then obviously treat. we have expanded the treatment and management along with sorry, is it visible now?
Yes,
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 yes, it is visible.
Sorry, I think there is a poor network here. I'm really sorry. So, so these are the 4 pillars I was talking about in the national strategic plan. These are divided into these prevent, detect, treat, and build components. And the most important of this is obviously the treat component, which is the best treatment regimen for all the diagnosed patients. We have to ensure that all the patients complete treatment and are successfully cured. Now coming to the causes of a drug-resistant TB. So broadly, the causes have been divided into microbial or programmatic causes or clinical. So microbial is obviously mutations. So mutations happen because of which MDR-TB can spontaneously arise, right? Although the frequencies are low, but yes, these can spontaneously arise. Programmatic reasons are non-availability of certain drugs, or poor quality of drugs, or poor storage, or even wrong dosages and combinations and prescriptions. So unless we are able to give all the drugs in the correct duration, in the correct regimen, inadequate treatment will obviously give rise to drug resistance. Then obviously there are some reasons around providers of programs, which are unsupervised treatment, absence of guidelines, non-compliance with guidelines, inadequate knowledge and training, lack of monitoring, and those kind of things. And obviously inadequate drug intake. So if the treatment is not observed, if there is poor adherence, if there is lack of information, and so on. So these are the reasons which actually give rise to drug resistant TB. So what can we do for prevention? First, DRTB cannot be addressed by mere diagnosis and treatment of drug resistant TB. The best way to manage DRTB is to frankly prevent it from happening. So how do we do that? We ensure that the routine drug sensitive TB cases are handled properly. They are diagnosed correctly and they are treated correctly. They are treated completely. That is the only way to prevent the advent of drug resistant TB, right? So it's always better to prevent a drug resistant TB than try to treat it. We have to ensure that systems for early detection and treatment of drug resistant TB forms are integrated into the existing TB services. We have to focus on proper infection control measures, right? It's an airborne disease. So we don't want drug resistant TB to be spreading through our own hospitals. So this awareness on proper infection control is critical. Then we have to institute measures to prevent incidence and transmission of TB even in the communities. So now coming to the treatment part. So we have a nationwide network of drug-resistant TB centers at the, as I told, nodal and district. We have a whole lot of program staff who have been trained in this. We have volunteers and community members who are engaged for this. Treatment always follows a pre-treatment evaluation. So what happens is the patient is admitted or evaluated at a nodal or a district DRTB center before we start the treatment. This is to identify potential risk factors. In that evaluation, we take a look at the DST results, the drug sensitivity testing results, because all our treatment is around the DST results. History of previous exposure to drugs, history of any adverse reaction. So treatment maybe he or she is serious for a week or 10 days for the regimen to stabilize. Or if the patient is healthy, apparently healthy, then we can even initiate the treatment on an outpatient basis after all the investigations and the evaluations. So that option is also there. We are currently moving towards a fully oral regimen. Currently, we had injectables in the regimen, right? Second line drugs for injectables. WHO has recommended that we should try to remove injectables from our regimens. So in line with the WHO recommendations, the country is now moving towards a fully oral DRTB regimen. So now let's come to the actual regimen. So which are the regimens that we use? So broadly, we use two type of regimen. One is known as the shorter oral bedaquiline containing regimen, and the other one is a longer oral regimen. So as I told, currently the injectable regimens are being phased out. So maybe over a period of 6 months or 1 year, we will be completely treating MDR-TB patients using oral regimens. So now we are also started using, as I told, bedaquiline and delamanid as per WHO recommendations. And this is one more regimen which is currently being pilot tested. This is yet to be rolled out. This is known as a BPAL regimen. This basically consists of only 3 drugs: bedaquiline, retomanid, and linezolid. The good thing is that in South African studies, this regimen has shown even better results than the current shorter or the longer regimen. And it is shorter in duration than the current regimens. So this BPAL regimen is currently being pilot tested in India as well. So now coming to the shorter regimen. It is called the shorter oral bedaquiline containing regimen. So this has an intensive phase of 4 to 6 months. It's normally for 4 months. It can be extended up to 6 months basis your DST results. So this has bedaquiline for 6 months. We have levofloxacin, clofazimine, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, high dose INH, and ethionamide. This is followed by a 5-month continuation period of 4 drugs: levofloxacin, clofazimine, pyrazinamide, and ethionamide. So basically what it means is it has a duration of 9 to 11 months. So as you can see, 9 to 11, although we call it a shorter regimen, frankly, it is not that short. So that's why we are looking at a 6-month regimen, which is the BPAL regimen. I'll talk a bit more about it later. So this is currently the first option that is available. However, we cannot give this to everybody. So there are a lot of exclusion criteria. Anybody who has been exposed to anti-TB drugs, anybody who does not have the DST results, all the DST results, we are not able to start the shorter oral regimen. So as I told, it has an intensive phase of initial 4 months, which can be extended to 6 months. The continuation phase is up to 5 months, and bedaquiline is given for a period of 6 months. Now coming to the longer oral MDR or XDR-TB regimen. So this is frankly the regimen which can be given to everybody. Those who cannot take the shorter regimen go here. XDR-TB patients are also here. So this regimen is the regimen of last resort currently. So this is an 18 to 20 month long regimen. It also contains levofloxacin, bedaquiline, linezolid, clofazimine, cycloserine. The duration is 18 to 20 months. There are no separate IP and CP. We give all the drugs for the entire period. Bedaquiline is the only exception that is given for 6 months, but even bedaquiline can be extended depending on the opinion of experts, which is the nodal DRTB centers. Here, pyridoxine is given to all of them depending on weight bands, because we see a lot of peripheral neuritis, hence these regimens are supplemented with pyridoxine. For XDR-TB patients, the duration is 20 months. There is no option of an 18-month regimen, right? So these are the shorter and the longer oral regimens. We also have something known as an H monopoly regimen. So basically what it means is there is a small subset of patients which are sensitive to rifampicin but are resistant to isoniazid. Although rare, we still have these numbers. So these are sensitive to rifampicin but are resistant to isoniazid. So what we do is we give them a 6 to 9 month regimen containing of 4 drugs, which is levofloxacin. Basically, we replace isoniazid with levofloxacin. Levofloxacin, rifampicin, ethambutol, and pyrazinamide. So this is a 6 to 9 month regimen. Normally it is for 6 months, but in certain cases like extensive disease or uncontrolled comorbidity or extrapulmonary TB, we extend it up to 9 months. All of these regimens are daily regimens. Now coming to the upcoming regimen, which is currently being pilot tested. This is known as the BPAL regimen. It consists of 3 drugs: bedaquiline, retomanid, and linezolid. The duration is 6 to 9 months, and currently it is under operational research. So as of now, I won't dwell too much into this. Once the operational research results are out, then this will be rolled out as a part of the program. So that was about the treatment bit. And then looking at how we are going to roll out this treatment. So we are trying to decentralize management. Initially, those of you who are aware or those who are connected with the program, they will realize that initially we used to refer every patient to Cuttack or Burla or Barampur. Now we are decentralizing the management to district level. All kinds of guidances and drugs, everything has been provided by the program. As I told, all these regimens are now being initiated at the district level. The H monopoly regimen can even be rolled out from the hospital level, the CHC, PHC level, at the health facility level. And this is one important thing that has come in. So Odisha is probably the second state in the country to start something known as a difficult to treat TB clinic. So what happens is we have a panel of experts at the state level. So any district DRTB center or nodal DRTB center which faces any challenges with the regimen, with the results of the DST, with the management of adverse drug reaction, they can always raise these queries, and our panel of experts will respond to these queries within 48 hours or 30. There is a timeline with solutions. And it was very useful. So we have this difficult to treat TB clinics for the complicated cases. Even the state experts can refer to a national clinic, which is there at the national level, which is manned by national experts. So these are the, we are trying to ensure early diagnosis. We are trying to roll out a NAC at up to the block level. We are doing a lot to fight this stigma because TB, all said and done, still faces a lot of stigma in the community. Even now we see TB patients being stigmatized, being ostracized in the community. We are doing a lot to fight that as well. And we are using a lot of ICT, the information communication technology, to ensure adherence. So we have this direct observation of treatment where the drugs are not given to the patient, but somebody actually gives the drug to the patient on a daily basis in front of. So we have a dot provider. This dot provider can be a family member. It can be our ASHA workers. It can be community trained dot providers. We are now augmenting their services with something known as medication event reminder monitor. So the patient gets a ping so that it's time to take your medicine. When the patient takes the medicine, the national directory gets updated, showing that the patient has taken the medicine. So when we see a discontinuation of treatment for a particular patient, that is flagged at the state level and at the district level. So immediately a team goes and tries to find out why is the patient not taking medicine. So we are now rolling out these kind of ICT initiatives. So this is all linked to Niksha. Niksha is the reporting mechanism, the ICT based. Hello. So yeah, so this is my last slide. So this is just to summarize about what I discussed. We have a lot of MDR TB cases. We know that a lot of these cases, almost close to 30% of all TB patients are resistant to one or the other anti-TB drugs. We have rolled out these services, and now we are coming out with these newer bedaquiline containing regimens and the other shorter regimens. Yeah, so this is basically all I wanted to say. So there is one more important point. Government of India has recently mandated all medical colleges to have a mandatory DRTB treatment center. Without that, I mean, it's a regulatory requirement now. So that has been rolled out by the Government of India. I described the difficult to treat TB clinics, and the other things I think we have already covered. So this was all from my side, and I hope I was able to stick to the time allotted to me. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you. Hello.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parija.
Thank you, ma'am.
I would like to request our second speaker, Dr. Arjun Pradhan, to present his topic, revised protocol in diagnosis of tuberculosis. And Dr. Pradhan, 20 minutes, please.
Sir, you are not audible, sir.
Please unmute, sir. Arghya sir, please unmute. Arghya sir, please unmute yourself.
Yes,
Now I am audible.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
Okay, various methods for DST test results interpretation and the integrated algorithm of DRTB. We'll also discuss on specimen collection and transportation to culture and DST laboratories, then diagnosis of DRTB in children. Coming to definitions, what is presumptive TB? This refers to a person with any of the symptoms or signs of suggestive of TB. Diagnosis of TB is difficult in certain key groups of presumptive TB patients. Hence, NAT is offered upfront for diagnosis of TB among these presumptive TB patients. Then presumptive DRTB. It refers to patient who is eligible for rifampicin resistant screening at the time of diagnosis and during the course of treatment for DSTB or H. monopoly DRTB. This includes follow-up positive on microscopy, including treatment failures on standard first-line treatment and H. monopoly regimen, and any clinical non-responder, including pediatric. Then universal DST refers to universal access to rapid DST for at least rifampicin and further DST for at least fluoroquinolones among all TB patients with rifampicin resistance, preferably before initiation of treatment to maximum within 15 days of diagnosis. Coming to a second line TB drug, this is an agent reserved for the treatment of drug-resistant TB. First line TB drugs used to treat drug-susceptible TB like ethambutol, isoniazid, and pyrazinamide may also be used in MDR-TB regimens. Bacteriologically confirmed TB, TB diagnosed in a biological specimen by smear microscopy, culture, or a WHO endorsed rapid molecular test and adopted by NTEP such as expert MTB or rifampicin TrueNAT. Drug susceptibility testing. DST refers to in vitro testing using either of the phenotypic methods to determine susceptibility. Then coming to drug resistant testing, this refers to in vitro testing using genotypic methods to determine resistance. Coming to active case finding, it is defined programmatically as systematic screening for TB disease through outreach activities outside health facility settings. Now, presently in our state, the activity is going on for COVID surveillance, that is known as this integrated campaign, as a part of which our ASA level workers are visiting from house to house to search COVID cases along with cases with similar symptoms of TB, leprosy, like that. In this case, in this type of activity, we are also able to get large number of TB cases. Along with that, I will also emphasize the fact that there is now a bimodal, bidirectional identification of cases. If somebody is being screened for COVID, then that person may also be screened for TB. And similarly, for anybody who has been found positive for TB, may also be screened for COVID. At-risk groups is any group of people in whom the prevalence or incidence of TB is significantly higher than in the general population. High TB transmission setting. This is a setting with a high frequency of individuals with undetected or undiagnosed TB disease, or where infectious TB patients are present and there is a high risk of TB transmission. Coming to systematic screening for TB disease, this is a systematic identification of people with presumed TB disease in a predetermined target population. Among those screened positive, the diagnosis needs to be established by one or several diagnostic tests and additional clinical assessments, which together have high accuracy. Then for programmatic point of view, adult is defined as any person over 19 years of age, and child is a person up to and including 18 years of age. An infant is a child whose age is below 12 months. Coming to the type of the drug-resistant TB, mono-resistant TB. A TB patient whose biological specimen is resistant to one first-line anti-TB drug only. Then coming to isoniazid resistant TB, a TB patient whose biological specimen is resistant to isoniazid and susceptible to rifampicin has been confirmed. Polydrug resistant TB, a TB patient whose biological specimen is resistant to more than one first-line anti-TB drug other than both H and R. Both H and R are sensitive, but a biological specimen is resistant to more than one first-line drug, that is polydrug resistant TB. Then comes rifampicin resistant TB, a TB patient whose biological specimen is resistant to rifampicin detected using phenotypic or genotypic methods with or without resistance to other anti-TB drugs. It includes any resistance to rifampicin in the form of monoresistance, polyresistance, MDR or XDR. Coming to MDR, a TB patient whose biological specimen is resistant to both INH and rifampicin with or without resistance to other first-line anti-TB drugs. MDR TB patients may have additional resistance to any of the fluoroquinolones or any other anti-TB drugs. Then pre-XDR TB, TB caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis strains that fulfill the definition of MDR or rifampicin resistant TB and are also resistant to any fluoroquinolones. They are now classified as pre-XDR TB, means the rifampicin resistance will be there along with fluoroquinolone resistance will be there. Then comes the XDR TB, TB caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis strains that fulfill the definition of MDR or rifampicin resistant TB and are also resistant to fluoroquinolones. That means the pre-XDR, levofloxacin or moxifloxacin, and at least one additional group A drug, presently to either bedaquiline or linezolid. If one of them is resistant, then it will be regarded as XDR TB. Coming to the vision of DRTB case finding under NTEP to provide early diagnosis to all persons with any form of DRTB through universal access to drug susceptibility testing. Rapid identification of DRTB is achieved by using combination of nucleic acid amplification test, NAT test, CBNAT or TrueNAT, first and second line probe assay, liquid culture and drug susceptibility testing, using a stepwise approach in integrated DRTB diagnostic algorithm. For detection of drug resistance or drug susceptibility, drug resistance testing is genotypic test, rapid molecular diagnostic method that detects specific gene mutations that are associated with drug resistance. Cannot be used for determining response to the treatment. For drug susceptibility testing, phenotypic tests, wherein bacilli are grown and subsequently tested for drug susceptibility using various drug-containing and drug-free media, used for determining response to the treatment. First line LCDST towards rifampicin, INH, ethambutol, and pyrazinamide. Second line LCDST towards streptomycin, levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, kanamycin, capreomycin, amikacin, linezolid, clofazimine, bedaquiline, delamine. Reliability of DST or DRT. Effective management of DRTB stresses the need for reliable, quality assured DST to be provided by laboratory certified by NTEP. Rapid molecular testing is making it increasingly feasible to detect MDR and to use the result to guide treatment decisions. WHO approved rapid molecular DST is recommended as initial test to detect drug resistance before initiation of appropriate treatment for all TB patients. Line probe assay can detect mutations commonly associated with resistance to rifampicin, INH, fluoroquinolones, and second line injectable agents. Quality assured LCDST to rifampicin, INH, pyrazinamide, moxifloxacin, levofloxacin, linezolid, amikacin, kanamycin, and capreomycin are available across the country. Panel testing for LCDST to clofazimine will be conducted shortly, and the DST made available across the country in 2021. NIRT Chennai and NITRD New Delhi have cleared panel from supra reference lab for LCDST to bedaquiline and delamine. These DSTs will be expanded to other national laboratories in 2021. Diagnosis and treatment algorithm. How we go for the investigation of DRTB cases. All TB patients will be subjected to NAT. On the right hand side, you can see if rifampicin resistance is not detected, then samples also will be sent to CDST laboratory for first line LPA. If first line LPA detects rifampicin resistance, then if the patient by that time has already been started with DSTB regimen, then that will be stopped. Then the patient will be started with H-monopoly DRTB regimen. If the patient has not been started with the DSTB regimen, then reflex testing for second line LPA will also be done and their H-monopoly will be started. Those persons undergoing H-monopoly treatment, having no non-responders, again will be tested for NAT. Then additional resistance or intolerance or non-availability of any use or emergence of exclusion criteria or return after loss to follow-up or failure. In those cases, that H monopoly regimen will be adjusted by using the replacement table. Then coming to the next, all patients, those having rifampicin resistance detected. If rifampicin resistance is detected, then also the same person sample will be subjected to first line LPA and second line LPA along with liquid culture DHT. For these drugs like bedaquiline, linezolid, clofazimine, pyrazinamide, oxyfloxacin, and delamine. After completing the retreatment evaluation, we have to check whether in Nixoid the CDHT lab results are available or not. If the results are not available and rifampicin resistance has been detected, then you have to search for other exclusion criteria for shorter regimen. Then I'll come later on what are the other exclusion criteria. If other exclusion criteria are not fulfilling, that means absent, then we can start shorter oral bedaquiline containing MDR or RRTB regimen. If by the time we start the treatment and the results of the LPA at CDHT lab is available and we find that no additional resistance is detected or H resistance is detected with only one gene, CATG gene or INHA mutation, not both, and fluoroquinolone resistance is not detected, then also we can go for shorter oral bedaquiline containing MDR regimen. If we find that before starting the treatment that H resistance is detected with both CATG and INHA mutation, or the fluoroquinolone resistance is detected, in that case, we cannot start the shorter oral bedaquiline containing MDR regimen. In that case, we have to go for longer oral XDR regimen, MDR XDR regimen. Later on, if additional resistance or intolerance or non-availability of any drug in use or emergence of exclusion criteria or return after loss to follow-up or failure type of appears, then longer oral regimen modified using the same replacement table. So this is all about the how the MDR TB cases to be diagnosed and how they should be initiated for treatment. So in areas transition to NAT for TB diagnosis, key population includes HIV, children, extrapulmonary TB, smear negative with chest X-ray suggestive of TB, contacts of DRTB patients, other vulnerable groups. CBNAT or TrueNAT, all extrapulmonary TB specimen except FNAC of peripheral lymph nodes and CSF to be sent directly to culture DHT laboratory for further processing, as FNAC and CSF specimens are precious and processing needs higher level of biosafety measures. H per mutation patterns include resistance inferred. Discordance in rifampicin resistance results between NAT laboratory and first line LPA to be resolved with a repeat NAT at CDHT lab, and microbiologist will provide the final decision. INHA mutation associated with ethionamide resistance, use other exclusion criteria to decide regimen if first line LPA is done on culture isolates for patients with smear negative specimen. Start treatment based on LPA results and modified based on LC-DHT results later whenever DHT is available. Now coming to the most important thing, what I was discussing in that flowchart, other exclusion criteria. For shorter oral bedaquiline containing MDR regimen includes history of exposure for more than 1 month to bedaquiline, levofloxacin, ethionamide, or clofazimine. If the result of DHT is not available by that time, if exposure is less than 1 month, then you can start with shorter bedaquiline containing oral regimen. If prior to the treatment, you know that already the patient is exposed for more than 1 month to all these drugs, then you have to go for longer oral regimen. Then other exclusion criteria are intolerance to any toxicity from a drug in the shorter oral bedaquiline containing MDR or rifampicin resistant TB. Extensive diseases like presence of bilateral cavitary disease or extensive parenchymal damage on chest radiography in children aged under 15 years, presence of cavities or bilateral disease on chest radiography. Severe extrapulmonary disease like miliary TB, TB meningitis or CNS TB in children aged under 15 years, extrapulmonary forms of disease other than lymphadenopathy, pregnant and lactating women, and children below 5 years, we cannot go for or shorter oral bedaquiline containing regimen, we have to go for longer regimen. This portion applies as states move to shorter oral bedaquiline containing regimen under guidance of NTP. Patients who were initiated on longer oral regimen based on history of exposure for more than 1 month, in whom resistance is not detected to INH or fluoroquinolone, may be switched to a shorter oral bedaquiline containing regimen based on the first line and second line LPA result. If the duration of longer oral MDR treatment period, that entire period is less than 1 month. This is the reverse. That means that this exclusion criteria was there in that case. So patient could not be started on bedaquiline containing shorter regimen. Patient was started on longer oral regimen. Later on, the results of FL first line and second line LPA shows that all are sensitive. In that case, patient can be again shifted back to shorter oral bedaquiline containing regimen if the duration of treatment in longer regimen is less than 1 month. So notes on extrapulmonary samples. All fluid extrapulmonary samples can be processed in CBNAT in periphery. However, TB samples such as tissue biopsy and lymph nodes require homogenization, which is to be performed in a TB containment facility available at NRL like RMRC, IRL like our TDC, CDST labs. High volume samples such as gastric aspirate levels may need to be concentrated by biosafe centrifugation for obtaining valid results in laboratory tests, including NAT. Processing of bronchoalveolar lavage, pleural fluid, and peritoneal fluid in TruNAT requires biosafe centrifugation available only at the laboratories with TB containment facilities. No attempt should be made to perform aerosol generating procedures such as centrifugation and homogenization in the peripheral labs. Precious samples such as FNSC and CSF, although can be processed at the peripheral NAT, may be escalated to laboratories with TB containment facility for testing by multiple methods. CSF must be processed as quickly as possible after collection. Therefore, the laboratory must be informed by a phone call immediately. Samples must not be collected in formalin. The left arm rifampicin resistant detected and the right arm rifampicin resistant not detected. We have already discussed in that flow chart. Then coming to patient turnaround time. In T-lab situation, the turnaround time is the time between the patient identification to the specimen collection, packaging, and transportation. At the lab, turnaround time is the time between the specimen received at the laboratory to the reporting of the results. Similarly, the post-lab turnaround time is the time between the receipt of laboratory results to the initiation of treatment or modification of treatment. So coming to definitions of DRTB in children. Presumptive, what is presumptive DRTB in children? Children in contact of any MDR or rifampicin resistant TB patient, lost to follow-up after treatment initiation, recurrence of disease after previous treatment, not respond to treatment with first-line drug, children living with HIV. These are presumptive DRTB cases in children. Then what is a probable DRTB case in children? Children with signs and symptoms of active TB disease who in addition have the following risk factors: close contact with a known case of MDR-TB, close contact with a person who died while on TB treatment, close contact with a person who failed TB treatment, non-response or failure of a first-line regimen, and previous treatment with second-line medication, and specimens fails to demonstrate Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Then confirmed DRTB. TST results suggesting drug resistance are from a NTP quality assured CDST lab and or by NTP endorsed testing method like NAT or LPA. So this is the algorithm of DRTB diagnosis in children, childhood TB patient, DRT or DST known, confirmed DSTB means drug sensitive TB case, treated drug sensitive TB case. If you confirm to be it's a case of the drug resistant TB, treated drug resistant TB. Status not known, contact with infectious TB patients, yes. Source is a DRTB patient, consult pediatrician, reattempt DRT or DST on appropriate specimen from the child, even if requires invasive testing like bronchoalveolar lavage. If still no information on resistance pattern, treat according to DST of the source case as a probable DRTB case. If contact with infection patient is not known, yes, DRT DST of source patient not known or has DSTB, then so do DRT DST of child source specimen, NAT as well as MGIT. If DRT DST shows DSTB, treat as DSTB. If DRT DST shows DRTB, then treat as DRTB. So points to be remembered, 2 specimens are to be collected and sent to the NAT facility. SOP for the triple layer packaging must be strictly adhered to and sample transported in detail. Sample must not be best but transported immediately after collection to the linked laboratory for appropriate testing. Presumptive TB or key population, all diagnostic patients and non-responders to treatment, all are subjected to NAT. If rifampicin resistant detected with very low level of mycobacterium tuberculosis in a patient with low clinical suspicion, a repeat NAT may be ordered by the physician. Rifampicin resistance is detected on NAT, offer first line, second line LPA, followed by LCDST as indicated in the algorithm. If rifampicin resistance is not detected on NAT, the patient is offered first line LPA for detecting resistance to INH. All INH resistant patients are subsequently offered a second line LPA followed by LCDST as indicated in the algorithm. Phenotypic DST for ethambutol, ethionamide may be inaccurate and not reproducible. No agreed DST methods have been established for some second line drugs like cycloserine, imipenem, silastine, and meropenem and PAS. So treatment is initiated based on LPA results and modified based on the LCDST results, which would be available later. PPTB samples should not be collected in formalin for bacteriological tests like genotypic as well as phenotypic. DRTB in children largely results from transmission of drug-resistant bacteria from the source case. Less commonly, it can result from previous inadequate treatment. AIC measures pertinent to the setting must be followed to all times. Biomedical waste management must be ensured. WHO approved diagnostics are also available in the private sector. Monitoring turnaround time is important for better treatment outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arjun Pradhan, for your nice presentation. Now, I request the audience for a discussion.
So, ma'am, there were a couple of questions in the chat box which I've already answered. So, if you want, I can. Those were important questions, so I can even discuss that as well. Or maybe if anyone has questions, they can ask.
So this is Dr. Mahapatra from AIIMS Bhubaneswar. Sir, my submission is that we don't have cartridges for this CBNAT Gene Expert machines since March. Sir, if you do not have a diagnosis of RRTB, how we can really implement the program? That is the really sorry state of affairs.
Can I answer, sir?
Yes,
Sir, actually, CTD has decentralized the procurement process of CBNAT cartridges. And recently, the state has started procuring CBNAT cartridges. Very shortly, all the laboratories will be getting CBNAT cartridges.
Sir, it is from March. Very shortly, can you give me a timeline, please? Sir, it is a patient need. Patient need. We are most concerned because I don't.
Sir, I know.
Yes, sir. Please, can you give me a timeline? It is March. Today it is July. Sir, this talk and everything has no value for not getting diagnosis, not treating patients. This is, I'm telling the core of my heart. This is a fact. This I do not have any cooperation from the state level. At least we do not have answer to many things. Let us come and discuss, sir. This is not giving a talk. It's fine. It's fine.
Sir, can I intervene? Can I intervene? This is not a purview of discussion here, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, if you say this
this
is all of you are doing for the patient care. This is my submission.
Dr. Mahapatra, this is an academic discussion. We should confine to academics. That is my appeal.
Sir, all these academics are patient care only. This is the fact. This is official meeting of the state. State people are there. If sir there, if I have nothing to say, sir,
this is for your time information. This is not official meeting of the state.
Sir, there is no official meeting. We do not have official meeting since many days, since COVID, sir.
Sir, you can address that at the right forum, not here.
Sir, okay, sir.
I would appeal to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, we want to have a discussion, academic discussion. This is pre-platinum jubilee discussion only on academics.
Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you.
Sir, can
Any
I
other
ask a question, sir?
Yeah,
Can I
yeah,
ask?
yeah.
Sir, do you have, till now, we have any data regarding exact incidence of this MDR tuberculosis or XDR tuberculosis at this state, our state? Because we know the approach, and I must appreciate Dr. Parija and Dr. Pradhan for reviewing the knowledge of testing and the therapy. But regarding the epidemiological studies, exact figure, maybe a pulmonary medicine or PHM faculties can provide us any exact figure of, because we have alarming data from other stations. Odisha incidence of MDR tuberculosis and XDR tuberculosis.
Sir, can I, with
Yeah,
your
Dr.
permission, can
Parija.
I? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sir, if you talk about incidence or prevalence, frankly, the answer is no, because we do not have a state-specific prevalence study done as of now. There is one country prevalence survey which is being undertaken. The results are yet to be out. But yes, your question is very valid. We do not know the denominator because we do not have a state-specific prevalence study. But what we do know is the case notification rate. How many cases we are able to diagnose, how many cases we are able to treat, that figures we have. But are we catching hold of all the DRTB patients? Are we able to diagnose and treat all of them? The answer is no, we do not have that data because we don't have the denominator data.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Dr.
Actually,
Parija, yeah, Dr. Parija, one more thing. In fact, the initial part also had made an observation regarding the extrapulmonary tuberculosis. We have an NTEP. We have got an NTEP, I think, mostly focused on the pulmonary tuberculosis. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah. So once you complete the question, sir, I will try to.
So do you have, similarly in the same line, we have no less number of extrapulmonary tuberculosis. We are not talking about the, lymphatic involvement. That is not the category I'm going to mention. But, we have GI tuberculosis, we have genitourinary tuberculosis, quite bone tuberculosis. We don't have a registry. That is one, first question. The second component is this MDR TB. It only refers to pulmonary or to other extrapulmonary also.
Very valid, sir. So can I answer, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. So you are very right. The program, at least initially, was entirely, mostly focused on the pulmonary TB because of multiple reasons. One was pulmonary TB is the one which is transmissible. That is the one which is infectious, right? Extrapulmonary TB is not as infectious as a pulmonary TB case because of the simple reason that it does not spread through cough or the airborne. It's not an airborne infection as such. So yes, the primary focus was pulmonary TB. We wanted to cut the chain of transmission, and 80% of all TB is pulmonary TB. Extrapulmonary was always 20%. But then we realized that we really need to take care of EPTB cases as well. There were a couple of issues with that. First is diagnosing EPTB cases. We need a sample, as simple as that. We need a sample to test. Now, extraction of EPTB samples is not something that many doctors are comfortable with, right? Not everybody can do a CSF tap, or not everybody can do even an FNAC. So as and when we get a sample, we can test any sample, sir. You give us a sample, the program can test it and give you all kinds of results, whether it is drug resistant, whether it is drug sensitive, if resistant, which drug will work, which won't work. So we will be able to provide you the entire data as soon as we get a sample. The challenge with EPTB was the sample collection. So now what we are doing is we are trying to establish certain centers of excellence, which will train people in sample extraction, and we are involving the private sector. We are engaging with the private doctors through something called as a PPSA, this was the first part of the question. The second question, do we have drug resistant TB in extrapulmonary? Yes. When we test sputum sample or we test FNAC sample, we test for drug resistance or drug sensitivity. We test for the entire gamut of drugs. So yes, we have extrapulmonary drug resistant TB as well. And the treatment is also similar. There are regimens, there will be slight difference maybe with the duration, but yes, the treatment as decided by the experts on the nodal DRTB center, the treatment is also available free of cost. It's a part of the program now.
Now, why I mention this because if you go look to the GUTB, in fact, particularly urinary tuberculosis of the urinary tract, there is a way of getting a sample. There is not much of a difficulty because many a time you have shedding of bacteria in the urine, many of the time. Now, as you get the MDR TB in this situation, we all of us have recommended that also, presumptive treatment also is one of the modality if you have a clinical, radiological, if there are correlation. And in urinary TB, we mostly depend on these two.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So there where, over our experience, what I'm telling, we do not have a data how often we have MDR in urinary TB. We don't have a data. Most of the time we feel, yes, if we have given, as a surgeon, what we do. Of course, I would like to invite the information from Dr. Prasad Mahapatra also. So in this particular area, we have been thrusting our all energy and all developments, all type of testing and resistance, issue of resistance to the pulmonary. Is it required or not? To also gives a little thrust because we have got an NTAP. That is one aspect. Secondly, as got transmissibility. That transmissibility also can be it could be sexual transmission also. So not that it only lungs can only transfer and other way it cannot be transferred. So a GUTB, you can always make out. A partner can also be contaminated with tuberculosis and he can also have a full-blown disease, whether pulmonary or extrapulmonary. Now, should we not give little extra thrust in the NTEP? Because you are from the WHO and should we not give a little extra thrust? 20% is not a small magnitude. That is one aspect. The second aspect, what I was telling, we have 27 millions of MDR TB. If I have seen correctly your slide, 27
Sir,
lakh
no. 27 lakh is regular routine all TB. MDR TB is around a lakh in India.
a lakh in
1.2
India.
lakhs.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. So 1 lakh MDR TB. Have we done any correlation? Many a time, if you can correlate, which are the reasons for this, whatever the hypothesis has already been explained. Do you have also a tuberculosis? Whatever drug has been given, it has been not of use. And what is the rescue for those areas? Rescue regime. Do you have any rescue regime?
I mean, the first question, yes, extrapulmonary TB should be given importance. 20% is not a small number. And yes, although not as infectious as pulmonary TB, it is still transmissible. You are very right. So as I told, the whole thing is the index of suspicion. If a clinician, they come to think of TB more as an exclusion criteria, right? I mean, if nothing else works, let us try, maybe it is TB. So if we start, if we think TB from the very beginning, we will be able to catch a lot of more patients. And if we get a sample, see, on the NAT tests, currently, we are not able to test only 3 samples, which is blood, urine, and stool. But
Yeah.
even then, if you give us blood or urine, we will be able to very easily do a liquid culture and DST and tell you which drug works and which doesn't. So we get a sample, we will be able to do this. There's no question about it. But yes, the index of suspicion, the sample collection, all those have to be strengthened. It's very important, as you rightly pointed out. Regarding the rescue regimen, I don't think I'm very qualified to give that answer. Maybe
Dr.
any of the
Mahapatra can tell,
experts.
Professor Mahapatra is there, he can tell.
Even Jyoti madam is there. I saw her somewhere. Maybe she can also chip in.
No, we
Jyoti
are
ma'am,
hearing them, we are hearing them all upon. We want to hear from
Okay.
people who have not been interacting quite
Yes.
often. Professor Mahapatra, are you still there? Professor.
Sir, I missed any questions. Sir, is there any questions? Sorry, sir, sorry. I just
No.
somebody has come and I was interacting with somebody.
Yeah.
Yes, please, sir.
See, what was my purpose of asking, we have not been giving that amount of thrust to the extrapulmonary tuberculosis. And we have never been trying to know what are the MDR TB in extrapulmonary.
Sir, it
So
is
that-
pretty much prevalent. Probably we are not able to really pick up the real diagnosis it is very much prevalent. It is MDR in lymph node tuberculosis, in other TB is also prevalent, but it is not as common as pulmonary tuberculosis. It is there. We are getting, in our institution, we are getting much more extrapulmonary tuberculosis than pulmonary tuberculosis, because pulmonary tuberculosis are mostly diagnosed in periphery and they don't need to come. It is a simplified treatment, doesn't require a pulmonologist to treat. And extrapulmonary, they are coming for different ways. And many of this say that I don't want to go out of the way, but many of the tuberculosis are all, some of the tuberculosis diagnoses are diagnosed and confirmed as melioidosis nowadays. This is one of the unfortunate scenario. So this is something. So it is on. This is my answer is that extrapulmonary tuberculosis is very much there in our setup.
Because being a urologist,
I have a question.
yeah, I'll come to it.
I have
Being
a question.
Professor Misra, just a minute. Being a urologist, I am many times at loss how to confirm a tuberculosis. Even though all the telltale clinical signs are there are radiological signs, but we do not have any microbiological growth. And we do not have a test, as rightly said, the tests are very limited by which you can do. Tests are coming and going. The gold test is gone. And many a time we find that we are at loss to come to a pathological diagnosis although we have a sample. Urine for AP is most of the time negative. Most of the time urine for AP is negative. Culture you have to wait for 6 weeks. So similar situations, and NAT is not possible to do from a urine. So we are at a loss. That's the reason I raised this topic, because I'm a urologist and definitely I wanted to harp upon the urological manifestation of tuberculosis. Anyway, Professor Misra.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So
Please
please
unmute your video. We want to see you.
So actually, I'm sorry, video is not unmutable. So only audio. I can speak with the audio. So I'm very sorry.
Devasis, can you help him? Devasis. Face-to-face interaction is always better. Please.
So please,
go ahead.
unmute the video. It's not.
Yeah. Allow him to unmute. Anyway, please go ahead.
Okay. So my question is, we are getting a lot of intracranial tuberculosis as well as spinal tuberculosis. So in those cases, we do not find any evidences in the pulmonary or hematological picture. So in that case, we collect the material, histopathology materials, and we send for biopsy, and biopsy comes suggestive of tuberculosis. So in those cases, can we go for this multi-drug resistant tuberculosis diagnosis? Can we send those materials for CBNAT?
Yes, sir. That is very much done in our institution. Most of the urology sample, most of the extrapulmonary tuberculosis, any TB aspiration, any lymph node aspiration, even if any bronchial biopsy also, we are sending for CBNAT.
I am talking of intracranial mass. There are intracranial mass.
I think it should be sent for CBNAT, but only request is that put in 1 or 2 ml of normal saline instead of that formalin. So normal saline, the laboratory can process it, and it's very much there. Even if neurotuberculosis we are getting positive, but definitely it is a clinical diagnosis. You have to treat according to the urgency of the case. But otherwise, it is can be diagnosed. In addition to pathology, can be diagnosed. That means this CBNAT ultra.
We want to know the multi-drug resistance in those cases.
Yes, sir. RRTB, sir, CBNAT gives a RRTB rifampicin resistant TB. So that means if you get a RRTB, then mostly it is a resistant TB. I think all WHO people are there. Dr. Parija is there. Anybody is all. So this is very much. It has been very much useful. After this expert ultra, the things has changed. Diagnosis has changed. It is no more. It means 2-3 projects are going also here also in AIIMS going one urology project. Dr. Das is doing. I think another urine has been established. One project has been sanctioned, but funding has not been given by what that means the STO. That is for pediatric TB on stool, that is a tool for getting what is that gene expert. So that has been really useful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Now that Dr. Mahapatra.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Mahapatra has raised this gene expert. We many times we get false negative gene expert.
No, sir. No, sir. It is, sir. It detect mycobacterium, the mycobacterium. So it cannot be false negative. It can, when it is very difficult to that. See, if there is some, even if dead tissue, it will get positive. It's so sensitive. So it is there's no.
No,
there's no question. It is-
why I said this, among one of the rapid diagnostic tests, that this is one of the tests that we do. But the fact is that the clinical pictures are definitely in favor of tuberculosis. Imagings are in favor of tuberculosis. We same for gene expert negative.
So,
So
sir,
that is what.
Can I come in? Can I come in, sir?
Yeah, now
Yes,
please
madam.
come. Please come.
Sir, when it is a
Okay.
postbacillary case, it may come out as false negative because you need at least 100 bacilli for it to come positive, even in CB9. That is the problem.
Okay.
So these are your samples from your section definitely must be having it's possibacillary most of the time. That is the problem where it may be false negative. So you can go ahead with the treatment.
No,
And
that we have been doing. That we have been doing because as from the beginning I told, we are really at a loss for confirmation. We are
Yes.
we are basing our treatment mainly on clinical and imaging.
sir, it is it's always an
Mostly.
issue in
Yeah.
extrapulmonary tuberculosis. That is why also the program is not having a big thrust on this extrapulmonary tuberculosis, because diagnosis at the initial level itself is very, very difficult. To establish the diagnosis of tuberculosis by microbiological confirmation.
Yeah,
Also,
and
ma'am,
again, one thing, Professor Sudhanshu Mishra told, they sent for biopsy and that comes with a report that is compatible with tuberculosis. That is because in the confirmation of a tuberculosis only when a mycobacteria is seen in the histopathological specimen. Otherwise, they have to say it is compatible.
Right.
That is what exactly the criteria by which they have to say. Okay, any other person want to give viewpoint?
Sir, namaskar. Sir, my question to Dr. Parija. It's a very nice presentation. So my question is, bedaquiline containing regimen for drug-resistant tuberculosis only is it institutional or it can be given in peripheral level? Once the patient is
Also,
diagnosed drug-resistant tuberculosis and the long duration, 18 months, you're telling the long duration.
I think
Can
let
be
it
given
be
in
the last
periphery
question. Let it be the last question because Honorable CM will be inaugurating in the Acharya Harihara. So let this be the last
Yeah.
thing, a quick
Okay.
response.
Okay, Dr. Thata, so your voice broke, but what I understood is you're asking, can a bedaquiline containing regimen be started at the district level instead of the patient coming to the nodal DRTB center?
Exactly.
So the bedaquiline.
Periphery
the
level,
only-
PSC level. Yeah.
No, as of now, no. We cannot start a bedaquiline containing regimen at a PHC level because bedaquiline is a cardiotoxic drug and it's a relatively new drug. So right now, the answer is no, you cannot start it at a PHC level. So maybe if the district DRTB center is equipped and trained and it has a pulmonary or a cardiologist somewhere or a medicine guy, then you can maybe initiate it at the district DRTB center under consultation with the corresponding nodal DRTB center, but not at a PHC.
You're right.
That's all. As of now.
I think we can conclude by saying that it is a very, very interesting talk by both the speakers. We've all got
Yeah,
enlightened.
but many
Thank
patients
you.
have that level.
Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra, for having joined, and we really got benefit of your participation. Now I hand it over to our HOD SPM for a formal vote of thanks.
Now I request Dr. Dipandita Rautrai, our Assistant Professor, Department of Community Medicine. He is also the representative of the department to offer the vote of thanks. Over to Dipandita, please.
First of all, I thank our esteemed speakers, Dr. Devadatta Parija, Regional Team Lead WHO NTEP, and Dr. Arghya Pradhan, Joint Director of Health Services TB, for beautiful presentations and for sharing their practical experiences with us. We really appreciate, sir, how you agreed to our invitation within a short span of time. Thank you so much. Secondly, I take the privilege of thanking our Dean and Principal, Professor Dr. Rateshwar Hutta sir, whose vision and constant hand-holding support is taking this pre-platinum jubilee celebration of SCB Medical College to a different level altogether. Thank you, sir, from the bottom of our hearts for showing us the way. Now I take the pleasure of thanking all our revered teachers, senior faculty members, doctors, both from Odisha and outside Odisha, for their wholehearted participation in this CME. To name a few, Dr. Harivansh, President, IUPSM, Dr. Pankaj Sadapal, epidemiologist, Indian Global Health Consultant, Dr. Mahapatra from AIIMS, Bhubaneswar, and many others. I thank our HOD, Dr. Meenakshi Mohanty, for her soft leadership and democratic way of leading us forward. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. We really feel motivated to work with you. Finally, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the participants from our college, my colleagues, my juniors, and from other colleges, Dr. Varisha from MAMC and many others, without whom this CME would not have meant anything to all of us. Thank you so much. Last but not the least, I would like to thank Mr. Debashish Panigrahi for his technical support. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank